Hi guys, welcome back to Miscellaneous Pleasures. Uh, Welcome back, or actually, welcome to my podcast or my YouTube channel, whichever platform you're watching this on. Yeah, Tenet. I'm here for I'm here with my review for Tenet, and I simply cannot do any justice to the movie with this review. Like, I simply cannot. Like, I mean, the amount of things that I have to say, the amount of wow, I mean, yeah, it's unbelievably good. I don't remember. This is my second movie review. The first one I did was for Enola Holmes, and that was just there in the YouTube channel. And I don't think I did that review of mine wasn't that good. Like, it was one of my earlier reactions and earlier videos. Uh, so I don't even remember what I said in that review, but the thing is, I am going to have a non spoiler section and a spoiler section in this one. So if you haven't seen the movie, then it's fine. Like, I will give you a warning as to when I begin the spoiler section, and you can listen or watch till that point and then move forward. Watch the movie and then come back to the spoiler section, because there are so many talking points. Trust me. I mean, this is a Nolan movie, so if you I'm guessing the most of the people would have watched his earlier movies, Inception, Interstellar, Memento, and the Dark Knight trilogy, stuff like that. So you would know that there will be talking points in this movie, and there are. So if you haven't watched the movie, then you can watch the non-spoiler section and then go back, watch the movie, and then come back, and then the spoiler section will be there for you. So, non-spoiler review. I mean, if you haven't watched the movie, then the only thing I can say to you is go watch the movie, because it's absolutely worth your time. And I mean, in this situation, COVID and stuff like that, it is obviously, you could think that this is obviously a risk to go and watch a movie in the movie theaters. And like, if that's your opinion, then please stick to it, because at the end of the day, your health is the most important thing for you, and it should be. But if you are willing to, I didn't think that there was a risk in going to the theaters, and there wasn't any, because they had maintained it pretty well. So if you are one of the people of that kind, then this movie is completely worth your time. 2.5 hours movie. There'll be, if you are in India, then there'll be a stupid intermission break for 10 to 15 minutes, and you know you have to bear with that. But apart from that, it was a perfect experience for me, as good as any of my previous experiences in theaters. So, you know, you'll be fine. As far as the non-spoiler section is concerned, I feel like, what can I tell you? Okay, I can tell you this. I mean, obviously, you would have watched Inception, Interstellar, and Dark Knight trilogy, Memento, Prestige, essentially every single movie of Christopher Nolan. Then you would have an expectation for a new Christopher Nolan movie. And I feel like, I mean, because this movie released in USA and other parts of the world in September or late August, and because we have had reviews, I have not read a single review, or I hadn't read any before I watched the movie. All I knew was the tomato ratings and IMDb and stuff like that. So if you have seen some of those things, then you might have a feeling that this movie doesn't live up to the reputation or the expectation that you would have from a Christopher Nolan movie. And I can safely say, after watching the movie, that that's rubbish. Like, this movie is as Christopher Nolan as it gets. You will enjoy it as much as you did Inception or Interstellar or Memento or any of those movies. Some may say that you may enjoy this more than them, and that's all I would say. I mean, that's all I'm going to say, because I don't want to say anything, any single bit extra that might spoil it for you. So that's all. What else? Non-spoiler section. Yeah, I could say this. John David Washington, fantastic. Robert Pattinson, fantastic. Elizabeth Debicki, very good. Kenneth Sir, he is Sir Kenneth Branagh, right? I think he is fantastic. Christopher Nolan, fantastic. Ludwig Göransson, the music director, very good music, very good BGM for the movie. Like, uh, when I watched the movie, I got a feeling that this movie missed Hans Zimmer. Like, his music, this movie's music isn't bad, but I felt that it did not touch the inception, like dream is collapsing, or time, or um, the first level dream fight scene where the train comes out in the inception. That music, they are legendary. In Interstellar, the No Time for Caution, and in general, the theme music that goes on in the background, fantastic. I felt like this movies did not wasn't up to that level, but after watching the movie, I did watch the movie 24 hours ago, like yesterday, actually 26, and since then I have heard the music more than once, actually more than few times, and I have to be honest, it is pretty good. It is very good. Like, I have felt like I have grown into the music very well. I feel like I like it more than I did it the first time. And yeah, so even that is fantastic. So Ludwig Göransson, brilliant job. Uh, yeah, that's all for the non-spoiler section, guys, because I honestly cannot say anything because I am afraid that I'll spoil something for you. So that's all. Like, go watch the movie. If you want my ratings, I'll probably give this a 8.5 out of 10. I'll give this an 8.5 out of 10, and this movie will probably go above. You know what? I'm not going to rate. I've already done a ranking, though not in a YouTube channel or a podcast. So I'll be doing that for the Christopher Nolan movies. So in that, I will include Tenet in. I don't think. I mean, it's definitely not better than Dark Knight, Inception, or Interstellar for me, but it is definitely up there because when you're going to rank a Christopher Nolan movie, it is not from best to worst or worst to best. It is best to good. And for me, good is Insomnia, which was insanely good. So, there you go. So I definitely rate this movie an 8.5 out of 10. And you know, go watch it. It's fantastic. Okay, so here begins the non-spoiler section. I'll give you a couple of seconds to close the podcast or the YouTube channel, YouTube video that you're watching. Three, two, one. The non-spoiler section begins. Oh my god. Oh, this movie was absolutely fantastic. I I mean, wow. I mean, I have a fan theory. This is a fan theory that I came up with during the while I was watching the movie, that Neil is Max, the son of Cat and Sator. Uh, I came up with the theory during the scene where they are basically discussing, like John David Washington, Pattinson, and I forgot her name, Cat. They were basically discussing as to if this guy Sator decided to die on his own, like if he decided to die, then when will he do it and where will he do it? And Cat basically said that in that Vietnam trip. Actually, he asked Vietnam trip and she said, yeah, a Vietnam trip, but I don't remember the date. And then Pattinson was like, 14 June, or I think it was 14 June. 14 June, 10 days ago. I was like, I mean, this guy knows a lot. And he had been showing quite a few like instances where he knew more than he should have. And that obviously felt because he already knew about Tenet and stuff like that. But then that scene for me, I was like, it had to be like I saw it sort of clicked in me that Max was Neil or something like that. Like that was a theory that I had. And then in the scenes that followed, the next like half an hour or whatever time was left, they sort of like even the ending scene where he's like, he has the thread in the bag and he's like, uh, I am going to weave a past in this fabric of reality or something like that. And then basically it was sort of the reveal for us that Pattinson was the guy who died and that he was the person who saved John David Washington in the first scene in that opera house. And he's basically the River Song. And for people who don't know who River Song is a character in Doctor who basically I can't even explain who River Song is for you guys, but for people who have watched Doctor Who, for me, Pattinson was a river song because he met, he had the first time Pattinson met John David Washington was something that we did not see because it happened in an earlier life for him in his past. And the last time we obviously saw him was Pattinson dying. We literally saw his death. And he also says that this is the ending. For me, this is the ending of a beautiful friendship. And for you, and he say the John David Washington says, yeah, it means that it is a beginning for me. So yeah, I mean, it's obviously a theory. It could easily be somebody else, and I feel like Christopher Nolan movies always have these talking points, and this is one of them, most certainly. Um, Review of the movie, like spoiler things, like what can I say? Like, I think this is the most complex thing that Christopher Nolan has created. When I say this, I do keep in mind that he created Inception, and for me, Inception wasn't complicated. And this is where a slight criticism for me for this movie, not for me personally, but for other people that have criticized this movie, this is the aspect, right? Even Inception and Memento, the beauty of a Christopher Nolan movie is that he creates stories, complex stories, or he, the screenplay or the way the movie is shown is in a complex way, like in a Memento, where it's just a linear story, right? There's no time travel or there's no anything like that. It's just a linear story, but presented in this fashion where we see scenes in a forward manner and we see the same scenes chronologically speaking in the backward manner, and grayscale and color scale, and then they merge towards the end of the movie. And the way Christopher Nolan explained this in one of his interviews was he basically used the hairpin logic, which wasn't like accurate to be honest, but it did make sense. Like hairpin is like I bloody don't know how to show you, but a hairpin is basically like a C, right? And if you take a C, then this is the backward and this is the forward. If you think like that, so they connect in the basically these 2 points meeting is the ending of the movie, and this is the forward. So I mean, I'm doing a bad job of explaining this, and for people who are listening in the podcast, you have to go and search in the YouTube or any other place Christopher Nolan's interview where he explains in Memento. It was actually an interview of back in 2002 or 2003 or something like that. The movie came out in 2000, so he explains the hairpin logic and how he explains the Memento story. So, as I was saying, Christopher Nolan has this fantastic ability to explain the most complex of things in the most simplest of manner. Like when you are watching Inception, and when I watched Inception for the first time, I did not get confused by the things. Obviously, the things intrigued me. Like that movie essentially has made me intrigued about dreams for the rest of my life. I am intrigued about dreams and lucid dreaming and concepts like that. And for the people who are watching YouTube, I'm just looking away because I'm watching the Arsenal vs Spurs game, where Spurs are currently leading 1-0 in the 25th minute. Coming back to the point, if you take Inception, like the concept, if you think about it now, if you think about it anytime, it will be complex to think about. Like dreams within a dream within a dream is complex. But the way the movie is shot, the way the movie is shown to the viewers, it is very simple. And with Tenet, it is not simple. The explanation is complex, and the story is much more complex than you could even fathom. And so what happens for any normal viewer who isn't versed with time travel and scientific science fiction like that, it will be difficult to follow. It is definitely difficult to follow. Like the whole idea of a bullet like reversing, the thing is, like, you people may not have realized this, or you may not like think about, when you think about it, you may not think of this aspect. Like when they show the reverse, when they show basically the scenes in, like, not the scenes in reverse, but when we see Sator or John David Washington in reverse, like for them they are moving forward, but even the forward times are basically reversed for them. So in both the aspects, we are basically seeing a lot of things in reverse and a lot of things in forward. So you would have to keep your focus on as to what you're watching. And if you're going to watch it for the first time, I mean, people listening to this have obviously watched it. Like, you would understand that watching this movie for the first time is a difficult job. And for me, I consider myself as a person who doesn't get phased by stuff like this. Even for me, there were a couple of instances which I had to Google, which I had to YouTube, and clear myself off. I had to have conversations with people about it, and yeah, that was yeah. So from that aspect, I mean, I loved it, right? I love movies which make me think, but there will be people who will have this as a criticism, because Christopher Nolan's gift has always been to show things, complex things, in the most simplest of fashions, or to explain them in the simplest of fashions, and this movie did not do that. But having said that, I have a feeling, and this is my take, right? A good time travel movie has to have a complex time travel element to it. If you don't have a complex time travel element to it, it's not a good time travel movie or a TV show. I'm sorry, it's not. Doctor Who, for me, it's not a good time travel show. It's a fantastic show. It's world class. It's absolutely fantastic. TV show. It's not a fantastic time travel show. And if you want to know the difference between these two, all I can say is, if you're going to compare TV shows, I'll put Doctor Who right up there, right? But if you're going to compare time travel shows for their time travel aspect and how they work with the rules of time travel that they have created for their movie or their TV show, I would place Doctor Who below a lot of other things. So, for instance, Predestination, brilliant. Uh, I mean, I'm currently watching Dark, so I wouldn't talk about it. Tenet, brilliant in that aspect. So, yeah, fantastic. Uh, what else? There was another theory that I read which basically said that Sator was never going to succeed because the pill that he had was CIA issued, and we were told in the beginning of the movie that John David Washington took one of those pills, and he did survive, right? And that pill was a fake. It's a very good theory. It's a very good theory. I do like it. Like, if if this was told as a fact, I would believe it, simply because if John David Washington is the protagonist, he is the person who has conducted this whole operation. I feel like he is intelligent enough, and this was shown a few times in the movie where he is intelligent enough to have a contingency backup plan. If the primary plan, which was the fact that Elizabeth Debicki's character, Cat, if she fails to if she fails to not have Sator commit suicide, then he has to have a backup plan. And if the backup plan is that the pill is fake, then that's perfect, right? Like, I feel like that's a theory that fits. So, so yeah, I'll take it. I mean, it's possible that it wasn't, like, we don't really know about it, but we can assume that it fits. So we can assume that as a theory that works for me. Um, yeah, I'll come back to the Max is the sun, or Neil is Max sort of theory. I'll come back to it later. There was another thing that I did not notice, but I found out after I googled about it. His name is Andre Sater, right? The palin Not the palindrome, but the reverse of Sater is Rotas, and Rotas was the company which was like responsible for the Oslo Air Freeport, and it was mentioned a couple of other places also, like Rotas container and stuff like that. And so that's one of those things. The other one was Arepo, the painter, not the painter, but the person who created the fake of the Goya painting. The palindrome, or the reverse of Arepo, is opera, which blew my mind when I read it. So that's another of those things. And there was this 5 by 5 square which had rotas or satyr, doesn't matter. Satyr, opera, theater, opera. What was the third one? I forgot. I think it was Tenet. Yeah, I think it was Tenet. So Satyr, Opera, Tenet, Rotas, and then Arepo. They basically form the word Tenet, vertically speaking. Like it's a 5 by 5 square. Everything is a 5 by 5 letter word. So that square was another one of those things. And apparently, yeah, I read something about it which I'm not sure of, so I won't talk about it. Um, yeah, the significance of the word tenet. Yeah, that's also something that my brother basically told me yesterday. Like we were discussing, why did Christopher Nolan choose the word tenet? You could have chosen any palindromic word, like you could have created any palindromic word, and that would have worked, right? Like I'm talking palindrome because forward and reverse, if you mix, they form a word. So palindrome. But yeah, the significance of tenet, like we literally realized it that 10 minutes was the operation, right? The splinter operation, the spincer operation. Is that what it was called as? Where basically, they had the blue team going reverse and the forward team or the red team going forward in time for 10 minutes. That 10 minutes, 10, 10 reversed, 10 it. So, yeah, that was also, again, one of those things. It was perfect. Like, one of those Christopher Nolan things. And, yeah, what else do we have? Yeah, there was this theory that the scientist who died, or the scientist who created this whole time inversion thing, a lady who committed suicide after displacing the components of this throughout time, and the theory was that she was Fleur Delacour. And when I say Fleur Delacour, I mean the young scientist who basically explains to David Washington as to what this whole thing is. Like, the scene right at the beginning where he goes to this facility where she's doing some research. So the theory basically states that that lady in the future creates this technology and she gives it to her younger self to research about it. Yeah, that theory makes some sense in the sense that, there was no other person that in this movie that has been told to us. There is no other person who has actually female scientist, sort of like brains of the operation. Or we haven't seen anybody else apart from her. So it would make sense that she did create this in the future. Though there is no evidence supporting to it, so I don't know how I feel about it. Like, it could be possible, but it feels like there's too much. Yeah, another thing is a lot of people have been talking about how Tenet 2 is like possible, or I don't think it is. Like, Christopher Nolan doesn't do sequels. Like, I honestly do not believe, and I feel like the story is complete enough. Like, I don't really need to know how these two met. When I say these two, I mean Neil and the protagonist. Like, how did the protagonist recruit Neil? Like, I couldn't care less, to be honest. Like, yes, I am excited, but the fact is there are very few things, very few questions that needs answered, and I don't feel like a movie is required for those questions. I feel like those questions are just good enough just as talking points for the movie. Like, Inception had the topple and a few other things. Interstellar also had that whole like library thing, talking points basically, and I feel like it's not necessarily required as a new movie. I don't think a new movie is required. Tenet 2 is not required, and I feel like Christopher Nolan doesn't do sequels, so I find it hard to believe that he will suddenly change it for this one. It would be fun, right? I mean, obviously it would be fun, and I'll definitely watch it whenever, if ever it comes, because it's a Christopher Nolan movie. But yeah, I don't think it's required. And I'm thinking of any other theories before I come to the Max's Neil theory. What other theory was proposed? Yeah, there was a stupid one that Inception, Interstellar, and Tenet are all in the same universe, and that Interstellar is basically the future that they are talking about in Tenet. where a future where the rivers go dry, the oceans rise, and stuff like that. Theory basically states that Tenet is happening and Interstellar happened in some future, and in that future there is a group of people who have devised this time travel sort of technology, and that their solution is basically to go backwards in time. Like, I mean, it's a very good theory. Like, if you would want to believe it as a fan, you would want to believe that Christopher Nolan has created this masterpiece of few movies which are all in the same universe and you don't even realize it. It's a very good theory. It's not a very good theory. It's a very sort of, you feel good about it. You feel good about this theory when you think about it. But in all honesty, it's not. Like, honestly, it's not. And this theory basically also said that the way Inception is tied into all of this is that the female scientist, Fleur Delacour, she and Robert Pattinson, they are the son and daughter of Cobb that we see. Like, we don't really see, but we see like just the last glimpse of them in Inception's last scene, just before we see the topple. The theory is basically that they are the kids of Cobb, which just makes the theory even worse. Like, I mean, honestly, come on. Like, I do understand that we live in this world, this time where we have Marvel creating 23 movies and like effectively like 20 movies to set up two absolutely fantastic movies, and where everything is connected to each other in just one of these brilliant, intricate ways. And we now have DC doing the same, but though not very successfully, but hopefully they'll do it well, because as a movie fan, I would love to see that. But so we do live in this world where we have sequels and movie franchises and stuff like that. But in all honesty, I don't think this movie requires it. So, you know, and in a way, I don't want this say sequel simply because Christopher Nolan, when he creates a movie, when you watch a Christopher Nolan movie for the first time, it's an experience that you haven't had before in your life, almost always. I don't know anybody in my circle or people I've known like who have thought about dreams within dreams before they watched Inception, or they have thought about, like, Inception doesn't, sorry, Interstellar doesn't have like that type of a thing where, I mean, not, going to another galaxy and theory of relativity stuff like this already existed and people knew about it, especially engineering students who have had some amount of reading about modern physics would have heard of theory of relativity and how time works with gravity and stuff. But it did have elements to that movie, or the movie had those elements which you haven't seen before, or which you haven't thought before. So in those aspects, that's a very special movie. Inception, very special movie. Prestige, very special movie. The fact that the answer was so simple. It's always very simple, right? What's the concept called as? Uh, I'm going to pause for a second because I need to search the name because it's very important. Yeah, I'm back. I mean, obviously you wouldn't realize it because I paused it. So for you, it's just one thing. Yeah, Occam's razor. Yeah, it just took me a second to realize that. So Occam's razor, for people who don't know this principle, Occam's razor is a principle that basically states the simplest solution is almost always the correct solution. And Prestige basically showed that in a movie where we have the Hugh Jackman character thinking that it is a very complex magic that Christian Bale's character is doing, and at the end he realizes that it was just a twin. Like, how simple is that solution? Even uh, saying Alfred, this guy, Michael Caine's character, he tells Hugh Jackman that I don't know how he is doing it, but if I were to do that magic trick, I would use a body double. And what's the most natural body double you can have? A twin. So very simple solution. I feel like with Christopher Nolan movies, you see things that you haven't seen before. This thing. I mean, in the same movie, we have Hugh Jackman doing creating clones of himself, right? So again, things you haven't seen. I mean, I think the Memento one was already like there. Somebody had already done it before, but in a very small and not so popular thing. I feel like I'm not sure, but even Memento, like for the majority population, Memento showed a way of storytelling which had scenes running backwards and scenes running forwards, and it merging towards the end into one. Unbelievable! Like I wouldn't have even thought of it before seeing that movie. So so for in that aspect, Tenet has shown something that we haven't seen before, at least not in this scale and not in this sort of popularity. So I mean, I don't even know how they shot this. Like this is the most extraordinary thing. Like I mean, one of those things. Obviously, people knew about it, but the plane crash scene, right? Christopher Nolan actually crashed the plane because apparently that was less that costed less money than actually digitally doing it. Unbelievable, right? Like unbelievable. But that's just one of those things. But I mean, I don't even know how he shot those scenes. Like you could say that obviously they shot the scene and then reversed it for all the times we see things reversed. But then if you actually think about it, that's not really possible because yes, in some scenes it is possible, but for other scenes where we have people running forwards in the same shot as people running backwards, how do you do that? Like, do you have people trained for that to make it look like they're running backwards? Like, I can't even fathom. Like, did they do this digitally? Like, I don't think Christopher Nolan is the sort of guy to do this thing digitally. Like, there was one of those interviews, right, that I saw on YouTube long time back. When I say long time, I feel like it's like a year back or something, where he literally said, we didn't use green screens on Interstellar. I was like, what? You did not use green screens for Interstellar. Like, how did you even do that? And then I watched the behind the scenes and like stuff like that, videos like that. And he talks about these camera shooting techniques where you enlarge the thing. They basically built models and enlarged it. So, the library sequence, for instance. So, I don't think Christopher Nolan would have just digitally manipulated the whole thing. There would have definitely been some scenes which have shot forward and then reversed, but I feel like a lot of the other scenes, there would have been some special training for it. I am interested to see the behind the scenes video. So, yeah, so that's that. Like, I don't know if I said this before in this video, but one of the things, I mean, Christopher Nolan for me is my favorite director, and if he creates any movie, I am watching it. I don't care what the reviews say, but my admiration for Christopher Nolan movies isn't because of the movie itself. It's more because of Christopher Nolan. And when I say this, what I mean is, I am a person who likes movies which have good stories, or good like the way they are shown, the story. And for me, all the movies were just different than what I usually see. I mean, we have seen James Bond movies with like action and like punchlines and stuff like that. We have seen other movies with time deal with time travel. Christopher Nolan dealt with time travel that has been dealt before by a lot of people very successfully. So you weren't actually going to see anything new when you just saw time travel. Like if a new movie, if a Flash movie comes tomorrow, or if any other movie comes tomorrow with a time travel, like there is in a Flash or a Doctor Who or a Predestination or even a Back to the Future or anything like that. Oh, first scored again. I think it was Harry Kane who scored. Anyways, the point is, if you saw a time travel movie, you wouldn't go, yeah, that's something I've seen new. I mean, you wouldn't do that because you already know most of the things that they show in the movie. Like, either a movie has time is fixed and you can't change it, and you just travel back and forth in time, and whatever has happened has always happened, like a predestination, even a tenet in that manner. Or you have stuff like Flash where you change time, as simple as that. So, but having said all those things, Tenet has time travel, but it is shown in such a new different way. time inversion where you see stuff happening in reverse, but you are moving forwards. Like, I mean, what the hell? Like, how do you even come up with stuff like that? Like, that's what fascinates, and that's the thing that I appreciate most about Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan, because they both created together, and his wife, who is the producer, and I don't know if she has any creative input. But like, the fact that these people thought of Inception, dreams within dreams, and how you could increase the time using a sedative, like a story like that, and how you build a story around it. I mean, that's a concept, right? There's another thing, right? Like, Christopher Nolan, he doesn't really explain scientifically what's going on, not always, not in a depth as other science fiction movies do. But I feel like what Christopher Nolan does very well is he creates a universe. He doesn't necessarily give it a reason why this is happening. He just tells that this is what happens in this universe. Deal with it. And then he builds a story around that universe, and a good story at that. And it works perfectly. Like Inception, they never really told as to how they created it or why they I mean, they didn't tell why they created it. They told that it was created for the military and training. There was literally one simple line said by Arthur to, what's her name, Ariadne. One simple line that was there for probably 10 seconds, and that's it. Like, they did not like mess around with, you know what, we mixed this chemical with that, and we did this, we did that, he did it, she did it. They don't, that movie doesn't do that. None of the Christopher Nolan movies does that. They create a universe. Christopher Nolan creates a universe where he tells, you know what, we have a technology created by the military, forget it. We have a technology where people can share their dreams. And in this universe, if you go inside, I mean, in all universe, even in our universe, right? I mean, if you dream for 1 hour. It's not necessarily 5 minutes in the hour time, but it's a shorter time. Like, the whole point is brain functions faster, so you get it. But then to think that you have a second level dream, and then the time there is just exponentially higher, and in the third level dream, much more exponentially higher. So that's what I appreciate about Christopher Nolan the most. The fact that he and Jonathan can come up with stories that are just mind blowing. And then you build a story around it. I mean, if you talk about story, Inception is not that big of a story. Like, if you think about the story that it has, it's effectively just a person or a man who wants to go back to his family, but he can't do that now because the world thinks that he killed his wife. And what profession does he do? He's a thief. This is the story of Inception. It's not that complex, is it? But when you include the dream element to it, and the way you then present the story, that's what makes it complex and interesting and brilliant. I shouldn't have sweared. Uh, when you think of Interstellar, I mean, Interstellar in a way, it has a simple story, and I don't think there's anything complex about it. But, if you talk about Tenet, it has to be a complex story, as I told earlier. It is one of the most complex stories that Nolan has done, simply because it has a time travel element to it. When you add a time travel element to anything, it just makes you just ask questions like, this thing that we just saw, does this have a person interfering in it from the future or from the past? Like, you have to question every single thing you see, and you can't do that in the first viewing. So that's what makes time travel movies really good by themselves. And then if you execute it well, it's a showstopper. It's an absolutely fantastic thing. So yeah, Tenet for me, as I said, 8.5. It's not better than Inception or Interstellar or Memento for me, or even A Dark Knight. Yeah, I just have to charge my laptop, so I'm going to pause it for a second. I'm back. So what I was saying. So for me, yeah, I feel like Inception for me is I hold it in a different complete pedestal, so I'm not going to compare Inception with this. Um, Yeah, but there is one thing, right? Like Christopher Nolan, when he creates movies which have a very high rewatchability factor. Not a lot of movies carry that. And this movie definitely carries it, and it's absolutely brilliant at it. So, yeah, unbelievably good, man. Unbelievably good. I mean, I was actually worried there for a second. Like, when I saw the reviews that came up in September, I was like, the world doesn't like this movie that much. I was definitely disappointed. I wouldn't say I was disappointed because I did not watch the movie in September, but I was disappointed that the world was more disappointed than I expected it to be with this movie. Even though I did not read the reviews, there was just an air of disappointment around it. And obviously, it came out at a time which did not really help its causes. So that also sucked. So all in all, I was like, okay. I mean, you know what? It's a Christopher Nolan movie. A Christopher Nolan average movie is still better than a lot of the other movies that comes up. So yeah, I was still going to watch it. And one of the things that I was skeptic, skeptical about, one of the things I was skeptical about was that it had a time travel, time manipulation element to it. From the trailers, that was obvious. And I was worried that Christopher Nolan had fallen into a trap of making these time manipulation movies and then not executing or not being able to execute it well, because it's like this, like the amount of plot holes that come up in a time travel movie, like if you don't pay the slightest attention, you could come up with 10 or 15 plot holes in a movie, and this doesn't have that. I feel like even if it has, like, it is probably has like one or two minor ones, which, you know, it's fine. It's not a big deal. So yeah, in that aspect, I was worried about that, but this movie just blew it away. In terms of the first sequence, I have to be honest. Dark Knight still is the supreme leader for it. Like the first sort of sequence, like Dark Knight has the Joker one, the stealing of the bank. This one has that opera house scene, and it was good. It was interesting, and but it was good. Like, I mean, I was anyways into the movie, so didn't really matter to me. Uh, have I left any aspect of the movie that I haven't talked about? Yeah, actually, two aspects. Three, counting the Max's Neil thing. Um, Michael Caine, the person who played Fleur Delacour in Harry Potter and who played that young female scientist, her, uh, this guy that recruited John David Washington into Tenet, that guy, I don't know his name, but I've seen him multiple times. Who else? Uh, I don't remember anybody else, but I'm sure there's somebody else who is very popular sort of actor. I've seen them multiple times, but they just featured for a scene or like 2 or 3 minutes. So yeah, that was surprising. I was like, you have taken or chosen this character, but you literally showed him for like 2 minutes or 3 minutes, which, I mean, it did not affect the story. So I'm not criticizing this aspect. It's just one of those curious things about this movie for me. And having said that, having talked about all these actors, John David Washington, Robert Pattinson, Elizabeth Debicki, or I am sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, Sir Kenneth Branagh. We've talked about all these people, and the one person I still haven't talked about is Dimple Kapadia. I have to be honest, I did not expect her to have this big a role in the movie. When I heard that she is one of the cast members, I was like, yeah, you know what? They are shooting in Mumbai, and they are shooting, and they have chosen as her as one of the cast members. She's probably going to have a very small cameo, like randomly coming up and like having like a minute and a half scene or something like that. But she was probably the fifth most important character in this movie. The first four being John David Washington, Cat, the Kenneth Branagh's character, and Robert Pattinson. She is the fifth, and she has such a big role. I did not even expect that, and I was actually happy that Christopher Nolan did not actually cast a person, an Indian actress, just for the sake of it, and that he actually gave her a good role, and she did that very well. So yeah, I was stoked about it. Yeah. After all of this, let's come to the Max's Neil theory. I did talk about it in brief in the beginning. Uh, like having seen this movie and having like analyzed it and like seen the not reviews but articles about it, like fan theories and stuff that are popular, I feel like if there is never going to be a Tenet 2, I mean, I did say that I don't think Christopher Nolan is going to do that, but let's just assume that there is never going to be any Tenet 2 from Christopher Nolan, then I'm pretty sure that Max is Neil. Simply because there were 4 or 5 instances. Actually, if I have to be honest, more than that, but definitely 4 or 5 instances where it was blatantly obvious. Once you know, if you know that Max is Neil, then those scenes become blatantly obvious and they make a lot more sense. Like him remembering the dates, as I said earlier, like he said June 14, 10 days ago. And that question wasn't directed at him. That wasn't a question about anything that might have come up in the news or anything. That was just a question about, hey, Kat, you told me about a vacation that you had in a yacht in Vietnam. When was it? Oh no, I don't remember. And this guy just says June 14th, 10 days ago, the same day as the Opera Siege. The same day as the Opera Siege is something that he would have heard in the news or anything like that. But I felt like this particular thing wasn't. And there were other instances where I just had that feeling like, I mean, it could simply be a river song thing where she isn't related to the doctor, he isn't related to John David Washington, but they share just a very good friendship. And it could just simply be that he was just a random person who got recruited, a random person who holds a master's in physics, who got recruited into this Tenet thing in a very future time. And he is now manipulating time and helping John David Washington. It could just simply be that, but I feel like the Max's Neil theory makes more sense if there is never going to be any sequel, because to have a random person do that, I feel like to have Sator's own son help in defeating him would just be perfect and the sort of thing that Christopher Nolan would do. Having said that, another one of those things is there is a scene I remember where Sator basically, he's talking about his motive and why he's doing it, and rivers drying up. That scene, he tells that one of the biggest mistakes I made, a sin, was to bring a son into this world which I knew was going to end. From Sator's perspective, that's what he meant. Like, he knew that the world was ending, so, why bring a son into all this suffering and stuff? But if you talk about it metaphorically, if Max does turn out to be Neil, then he created a son who helped in defeating himself, or defeating his father, which would make so much more sense to the same statement. Like, I made a mistake by bringing my son into this world, because if I hadn't made that mistake, then he wouldn't have been there to stop me. So again, the sort of thing that Christopher Nolan would do. There was this theory I read in one of those articles, which basically said that Max is short for Maximilian, and in French it would be Maximilian with an E in the end. And if you put it in reverse, then it would come up as Neil, and that's why he chose the name Neil, because like that. It's a big stretch. It's a big stretch for me. Why would he choose a French name? Like, why just not English? Like, I mean, that's an obvious question, but like that's something I think it's a bit of a stretch. But the other two reasonings, and in general, like I feel like again a talking point, and I feel like this scenario is just as likely as it is unlikely, and that's, in my opinion, good enough odds. Um, and in a way, it would make sense because, again, in that ending scene where we have Pattinson say to John David Washington that we have this beautiful friendship that for me is ending, but for you it is just beginning. In that scene, he also asks, like, beginning of that conversation, he asks him, John David Washington, are you going to meet Kat in London? Are you going to see her from afar? Which John David Washington answered as no. But then we obviously saw the scene that followed where he basically killed Dimple Kapadia's character, Priya, and he was there seeing Cat from afar. And if he did that for a good amount of time till Max grows up, then Max would eventually find out about it, and when they are having those adventures and stuff. So so if Neil knows all about it because he has lived those moments, then that question sort of makes sense. Like, he already knows that he's going to do it. He's just asking it because he wants to know the response. So stuff like that. That's what makes me feel like Neil is Max. Um, there's obviously one of those articles basically said that what, he's a 35-year-old person approximately, and the kid Max is probably like 10 or 9. I don't know his exact age, but he felt like he was 9 or 10. I'm so sorry. He was 9 or 10. So effectively, the difference in age between Max and Neil is 25, 26 years. So if a grown up version of Max, who calls himself Neil, has to come back to this time, he has to live 13 years in reverse, which feels like a lot and impractical. And I get that logic. How much ever distributed those 13 years may be, he has to travel 13 years back, because one thing that we know for sure is that this inverted sort of thing runs at the same speed as the forward thing. Like, you can't just travel to 2020 from 2090 or from the year 2100 to year 2000, like 100 years. You can't just jump like that because this doesn't have the conventional time travel sort of method. You have to travel in reverse, so you have to live the seconds as seconds. You can't just do it in an instant. So that theory makes sense. I give it to you. Like, it makes sense. And that's probably one of the reasons. It's a very good point. It's a very good argument against it. One of the reasons I feel like I just said this scenario is just as likely as it is unlikely. So, yeah, but I love it. I love that theory and I want it to be true. Um, Another thing, I mean, there is no other thing, but let's just talk about the scenario because I haven't of a Tenet 2. Then I don't know, like, this story is complete for me. Like, I don't see any incompletion in this story. But excuse me, I don't know why I'm coughing so much. But if you had to pick out any plot points which seem incomplete to you, then they are definitely the things like, when did John David Washington recruit Neil? Is Neil Max or is he just some other person? Like, how did they meet? What are the things that happened? Like, how did that beautiful friendship develop that Neil was talking about? Those are the things that you would love to see. You would also love to see the female scientist who created the Tenet technology. You probably want to see that, and how she, like, realized that it was a dangerous thing and all those stuff. You would probably want to see a bit more of Sator and his younger life, perhaps, or how he was contacted the first time. I mean, the first time he was contacted was through that that thing, that event that happened in northern Siberia when he was a kid, like in the 70s or something, and he was like digging through that site because he got the contract, and he got the gold, and there was this paper which had his name on it, some document, and that's how he got the money, and that's how he got that whole sort of beginning of the whole thing. But you'd probably love to see much more of his younger sort of thing, and how perhaps, like, was this whole, why is Jose Mourinho laughing? I would definitely have to see this back, 50th minute in the highlights. I was saying something. So yeah, the question is, uh, it would be interesting to see if Cat and Satyr, the first time they met, did they meet naturally, or did they meet because of somebody in the future's influence? Like, there is no evidence supporting it, but imagine a scenario where, let's say, John David Washington is the person who is responsible for these two people meeting for the first time. Like, that's the sort of thing which would interest me. That's the sort of thing which would be really interesting to watch if a Tenet 2 comes out. I don't personally think it's coming out, but it would be interesting to see that. And the thing is, the problem for me with sequels is, again, as I said, it loses that natural, the first time watching sort of aspect. Like, Tenet has a very beautiful thing that you haven't seen before in your life. A Tenet 2 would have a lot of those similar things, and it wouldn't be the first time you'd be watching it because I've already watched Tenet. So, you know, I feel like a lot of the sequels are money making businesses, and Christopher Nolan doesn't really need to do that because he has a brain good enough to create stories like this for the first time. So, yeah, So, yeah, I personally wouldn't want a sequel, but if a sequel does come up, then I'm definitely interested in watching it because there are so many aspects that, as I just said, there are these aspects plus whatever creativity that comes out of his head and Jonathan's head, that would be worth watching. All in all, fantastic movie, much better than my expectations had changed due to the reviews and the ratings that I saw from September. But the scene that comes to my mind while trying to explain this movie, or my feelings toward this movie, is a scene from Inception. In Inception, the scene where Cobb and Arthur, they are, you know, they're basically going to fly off to their homes after the botched dream thing that they did on Sato. And, there they have this conversation where Sato basically asks Cobb whether he can do Inception. And then he comes up with this whole dialogue where he says, take a leap of faith. Do you want to take a leap of faith, or die an old man filled with regret, waiting to die alone? And after this dialogue, not actually after this dialogue, but before this dialogue, basically, inside the second level dream, or rather the first level dream, after they come out of the second level dream, Sato says to Cobb, when he's lying on the floor, he feels the carpet and he says something about the carpet, and he effectively says, my carpet is definitely not made of polyester. And that's how he realizes that he's still dreaming. And then he says, you have lived up to your reputation, Mr. Cobb. And that's the statement I have for Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan has definitely lived up to his reputation by in through this movie. And whatever anybody has to say about it, in my eyes, he has lived up to the reputation. And this is one of those classics. And I read a very funny and witty sort of. I read the title of an article which basically said, I don't know if this movie is ahead of its time or behind its time. Like, that's just perfect. So, fantastic movie, and definitely would recommend everybody to watch it for the second time, because if you are till here, then you are one of those people who have watched the movie. So, it's definitely worth watching twice, thrice, four times, five times, as much as you want, because I feel like this is one of those movies that you wouldn't get tired of watching, because there'll always be that one small aspect that you probably missed in your first, second, or third time viewing, which would still improve the story that you already know. So, yeah, that's all for this video. It has been a very long 1 hour review for Tenet, and I feel like this movie definitely deserved it. And if you did listen till or watch till here, thank you so much, because you felt it you felt that this content was good enough to reach till here, and that single thing I appreciate very highly. And if you could leave me any appreciation or any criticism or any constructive feedback or anything like that, you're most welcome to do so. And I have just touched the 1 hour mark. I feel like this is where I finish. Um, in hindsight, I feel like I should have done the review for this movie before I watched the movie. Nah, I'm just kidding. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Bye, guys.